Welcome to Beerstories from Beerstory Brewhouse and another grain to glass video. This time with my double mast Imperial Baltic Porter called a Baltic Winter Night, which I won a contest, best of show, over 6% ABV. So this is a full recipe and everything about this beer. In January 2023, I won Best of Show with this beer, beers over 6%. It was the contest with both real breweries and homebrewers. There were about 35 breweries, I think. And I won Best of Show with this beer, and I thought I would run through the recipe with you guys. What I thought about when I brewed this beer was I wanted a really rich beer, a full flavored beer. The contest that I entered, they like dark beers, and the beer festival actually started as a dark beer festival. It's not anymore really, but so I knew the audience would like a dark beer, so I brewed a dark beer for them. And a lot of things went through my mind when I made the recipe to match the audience. And I think I'll just run through it all with you guys. It's an Imperial Baltic Porter called Baltic Winter Night. And going through the vitals, it's about 10.8% ABV. I didn't want to make it stronger because that can scare off some people. It will get too strong. So this is kind of a sweet spot for entering these kind of mainstream consumer contests, I think. I say this because I actually won the year before this as well with an Imperial Stout at the same ABV. I just think when it's about 14%, I love those beers, and I really love them, and I love brewing them as well. But they can be too strong for some people. So this is more mainstream. If I were to brew this for myself, I would probably make it stronger. But this works very well, and many people can enjoy this. So that's why I ended up here around the 10% ABV. Original gravity 1100, final gravity 1018. So this is pretty thin for such a big beer, and that's because I wanted the feel of a Baltic Porter, which is more, it's a lager, so it's supposed to be more, in my opinion, it's supposed to be thinner, it's supposed to be a little cleaner and crisper than an Imperial Porter or Imperial Stout. So that's why I wanted it to end kind of down there, so it wouldn't be overly sweet. It's still sweet, it's still pungent, it's still full flavored, but it feels like a Baltic Porter. EBC is 113, so it's black. And that's why it's called Night, Baltic Winter Night. It's a black beer with a beautiful brown foam. IBU is 37, and this is kind of low for a big dark beer like this, but I think because the yeast profile is so clean, and there's somewhat a lot of dark malts in here, and the EBC is over 100. I think it's very, very balanced. It's sweet, but it's not overly sweet. And that's due to the fact, even though the IBU is pretty low for such a beer type here, the dark malts, they just bring some bitterness and some, it's not that roasty because it's not a stout, so it's more coffee, chocolatey like, but yeah. I wouldn't change a thing about this recipe. It won Best of Show, so it would be, you can play around with it, of course, but don't try to brew it like it is. But the 38 IBUs makes it just balanced. You can actually, and you can see what I'm talking about here. The BU to GU ratio is very, very low for a beer type like this. But it worked. It worked. So yeah, so don't change that at all. Try to brew it like it is here. Going in for the fermentables, there's a lot of them. 40% Vienna malts, 32% Munich malt, 25 EBC, and then we are going into specialty malts already. So we got 4% Carafa Special 2. The Carafa Special has no husk, so it's not that astringent and bitter. And then I added a crystal 150, 4% as well. Dextrin malts, 4%. Flaked oats, 4%. Wheat malt, 4%. Carafa Special 3, 3.3%. Crystal Extra Dark, 1.5%. And then I added rice hulls as well. So this is kind of the new recipe because I actually added 300 grams or yeah, just about 3% of lactose the first time. And that really worked well, actually. But I don't like the way the lactose age. So I've taken it out of the recipe, but you can add 300 grams of lactose if you want to build up the sweetness a little bit more. But that's why I added the dextrin malts. So if you want to add lactose, then take out the dextrin malts. Pretty simple. Yeah, and I just added rice hulls just so I wouldn't get a stuck mash. But this is double mashed. There's a video down in the description on how I do my double mash, so you can find it down there if you want. Or I'll place it out here somewhere in the end. So that was all the fermentables. For the hops, I added, this is boiled for 60 minutes. It's actually a 30-liter batch, so it's about 7 gallons, I think. 60-minute addition is 37 grams of Magnum. That's about 32 IBUs. And then I added 20 grams of East Kent Goldings, or just about 4 IBUs at 15 minutes. And then again at 2 minutes, another 20 grams, or 0.7 IBUs. You can leave out the late hop additions, the late kettle additions, if you want to. In my mind, they brought some complexity to the beer. Well, East Kent Golding is this kind of earthy, herbal character, and I think it worked well, actually. But after aging it half a year, it doesn't really matter. So you can just leave them out if you want to. For the water profile in this, I just went with a pretty balanced. This is actually almost just the water coming out of my tap. I added a little bit of canning salt just to bump up the chlorides a little bit. You don't want to build up the body in this with minerals. If you want to do anything, you want to accentuate the malt flavor, so to build up the chlorides instead. But this works very well, actually. So I just added a little canning salt, and then I added yeast nutrition, and that's really, really, really important in these strong beers. And then I added 2 small vanilla sticks in the fermenter, actually. I just put them in boiling water just to disinfect them, and then I added them just along with the yeast. The mash, I made a double mash, so 65 for 1 hour each time I mashed, and then I mash out 78. And then I actually added 5 packages of W3470 from Fermentis. Brewing it today, I would probably use the Nova Lager, but both things work. I love both of those yeasts, so yeah. Well, the W3470 is a beast of a yeast. It will rip through this in a couple of days. You can see here, I actually fermented it at 19 degrees Celsius for 5 days, and as I remember, it took 3 days to eat through all the sugars. And then I let it condition. I ramped the temperature up for 22 to 22 degrees Celsius, and just let it rest there for 7 days. You can leave it longer if you want to. There's no problem. You can leave it in there for 4 weeks if you want to. It's not a problem. Yeah, and then I bottle condition it. And I do that with beers I want to store for a long time, because the yeast will eat up the air, the oxygen in here, so it can last longer. And then, yeah, pretty normal carbonation. And I guess that was the recipe. As I said, there'll be a link or a video here with how I double mash. For the flavor in this beer, it had an incredible aroma of kind of, this coffee chocolate-like aroma. And then there's no astringency. There's just these beautiful coffee chocolate flavors with a little licorice. And then the vanilla just gives this just a touch of sweetness. As you can see, it's not a dry beer at all, but for such a big beer, it is a little dry. And the vanilla just rounds it all together. Really beautiful. It has a beautiful brown, light brown foam. The oats and the dextrin malts make the foam last pretty good, I think. For such a big beer, it can be a bit hard. Yeah, it's just a beautiful, complex beer, and the people at the beer festival really, really loved it. I think half an hour before the show ended, I ran out of beer, and a lot of people came up to me and wanted more, but I couldn't give it. So the word spread around, especially in the end, and I was pretty busy, and people were really enjoying the beer. So yeah, and that's also why I won Best of Show over 6% ABV. So it's a lovely beer. I wouldn't change anything to this recipe if you want to brew it. If you like lactose in a beer, if you want it sweeter, you should add 300 grams of lactose, but not more than that. So I guess that was it. Remember to check out the video on how I double mash, and if you have any questions, write to me. Other than that, just have a happy brewing out there.